Hi, in this video tutorial, I'm going to show off how to set up two-way MIDI talkback with the Livid Ohm RGB Slim controller. The same basic idea will work with any sort of MIDI controller that has light-up buttons or two-way feedback such as motorized faders. So what I'm going to show you works with pretty much all UI items in VDMX, including pop-up buttons and sliders, pretty much everything. So since it's a general idea, I'm going to use the Control Surface plugin, which lets me just create a general set of control items. So I can just make a toggle button, and you can see in the UI inspector here that when I click on this toggle button, it shows me the settings for it, and it could be momentary or I could rename it. But what I want to do right now is just click the detect button and press on my MIDI controller, and now I can press this button on my hardware controller and it toggles my control surface in VDMX. And if I click the enable echo on all receivers option here, now when I press on this button and it toggles on in VDMX, the button on the controller turns green, it lights up, and if I toggle it off in VDMX, the light turns off on the controller. And since this controller can light up a whole bunch of different colors, if I go into the option panel here, I can set what velocities get sent for note ons and note offs. So if I were to change this to maybe a 1 here, then it goes between a white and a green light. And if I change this to, say, maybe 81, now it goes between yellow and green, and the Ohm controller can go through a bunch of different colors. And if I want it to be something else, I can also do maybe 17. I can make it go between yellow and red as it goes off and on. And you can see that as I click the button in VDMX, it also toggles. So the next thing I want to show off is that you can do the same thing with one of our pop-up button interfaces. So the pop-up button in VDMX, this also works with, say, our page button if you want to use that instead. So if you have multiple pages, what I'm about to show off will work with that. But with the pop-up button, you can just sort of make arbitrary sort of menu items. So I can make this untitled 2 or untitled 3. And I can now assign shortcuts to individual items in here. So I can do a detect and click on that one, and a detect on here. Oops, I set those to the same thing. I'll change that to that. And here. And like with my other button, I can change it in VDMX. And when I click the enable echoes on all receivers item, now we'll see on my controller, the item lights up. And as I change it in VDMX, it changes it on the controller. And as I change it on the controller, it changes in VDMX. And like with our button, I can go in and I can change it so that the velocity that gets sent for the offs is different. So now I can switch between these menu items. And now I'll just show off another quick thing that you can do. We've also added in this for sliders. So if you have a slider in VDMX, again, there are receivers for these. So if you have a motorized fader, or if you're using a controller that works with OSC, that's pretty useful. But for a MIDI controller, you can go into the marks section, which lets you add interesting points. So I'm just going to add a few right now really quickly and click the auto space button. And now I can go through and use the continuous detect mode. And I'll hit detect, and I'll toggle through these buttons. And now as I press them, you'll see that it jumps to those slider positions. And of course I can hit echo. And now as I press these buttons, they'll light up on here. I can of course go into the options and set it so that the background color is different for these. And of course, as I adjust the slider in VDMX, it also lights up whatever the nearest point is on the slider. And this can be particularly useful if, let's say, I want to have the measure position. I can sync this to measure position on my controller, and now these buttons will light up. You can also use this, say, with audio analysis or some other ways. And of course, if I'm clicking up buttons on and off here, and I could change items here. So all of these things work this way. Another handy thing that we added is a multi-button interface so that you can work with multiple buttons at a time. So you can say that I want maybe a 4x2 grid or maybe a 4x3 grid. And you can again do continuous detect mode. I'll just set this so that I can watch them as they're going. So I'll hit continuous detect, and I'm looking for a 4x3 grid, so I could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn on echo, and there we go. Now I've got this multi-button interface here, and these ones change this pop-up button here, And of course, since I want to make these a little bit differentiable, I can change this in the background color on these ones a little bit different. So I can change that. Maybe I want to have these ones so they're red here. So you can do pretty much a lot of different things here to customize your own controller. And this same basic idea also works in a media bin. So if you've got a whole bunch of clips, you can do detect on that. And in the sending tab, you could configure what all of the states are for that. So right now there are no clips loaded, but if I were to say maybe just load in one movie, now it turns green there because I can play something. And if I load in some more clips, the other ones will turn green. And whichever one is playing on my layer right now lights up red. And once again, I can go into the sending tab and change what all the velocities are for that. So that's a couple of things you can do very quickly and have a play with it.